I'm Elizabeth Flannery, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Honolulu. Unitarian Universalism is a progressive, inclusive faith that welcomes people of many backgrounds and beliefs. Whatever you believe about God or don't, you will be welcomed here and challenged to become your best self. We are guided by moral principles and draw inspiration from science, history, and all world religions, and we put our values into action. As we gather and worship today, we will celebrate our connections with one another, with our higher purpose, and with the mystery of life. As we begin to center ourselves for worship, please also take a moment to ensure your electronic devices are silenced. Thank you. We are a vibrant and growing and busy community working to boldly grow compassion, justice, and joy. Please read the announcements in our newsletter, on our website, and printed in the insert on the order of service this morning to learn more about the many activities we have going on. I would like to draw your attention to two particular announcements. Beginning in February, we'll be changing our services just a little bit. We'll make the 9:15 service, which is currently the reflective service, a carbon copy of the celebratory service. This was a decision made by the worship associate team in an effort to balance out the attendance at both of our services so our space can fill our growing community. And if you have any questions or comments about that, please feel free to speak to our worship associate chairs, which is myself and Eleanor Kleiber, and or Jonipher. And now it's time to light our chalice. So as we light our chalice, please join me in saying, we light this chalice with the embers of compassion. We light this chalice with the torch of justice. We light this chalice with the radiance of joy. So if we have any keiki who aren't already up front, or keiki at heart who would like to come up front, please join us. We have everyone up here? Okay, so I know that you guys have been working hard in RE and you've been learning about our principles. Is that correct? Yeah, I think so, maybe, our 7 principles. So our first, you learned about them a long time ago? Okay, well, I'll remind you a little bit today. And we'll keep learning about them in RE, I know. So our first principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And our 7th principle is respect for the interdependent web of which we are all a part. So this story today is a little bit about that and how we can work to make sure we're valuing those principles. So, did you guys know that all day long, everyone in the whole wide world walks around carrying an invisible bucket? Oh, well, you can give us some ideas at the end then.
I heard this story at my school.
At your school? Okay, good. Well, this is old hat for you guys. You guys can give me some good ideas at the end then. I'm glad you already know about buckets. So, you can't see your bucket, as many of you know, but it is certainly there all day. You guys have a bucket, and every member of your family has a bucket, and your grandparents and your friends and your neighbors, everyone has a bucket. Even your pets. That's true. That's right. And your bucket has a job, and the job of that bucket is to hold your good thoughts and your feelings about yourself. And you feel happy and good when your bucket is full, and you feel sad and lonely when your bucket is empty. Other people feel the same way too. They're happy when their buckets are full, and they're sad when their buckets are empty. It's great to have a full bucket, and this is how it works. You need other people to fill up your bucket, and other people need you to fill their bucket. So how do you think you fill a bucket? So you guys have already heard this story, so I think you might have some ideas of how to fill a bucket. Okay, well, we'll cover it. Staff, you said be nice. Yes?
Like giving people love.
Giving people love, yes. That's a very good idea on how to fill a bucket. When you fill a... Eat pancakes? Yeah, that could, if you made pancakes for someone else, that could be an option. So you fill a bucket when you show someone love, you say or do something kind, or you even give someone just a smile can fill someone's bucket. A bucket filler is a loving, caring person who says or does nice things that makes others feel special. But you can also dip into buckets and take out good feelings. You dip into a bucket when you make fun of someone, when you say or do mean things, or even when you ignore someone. That's called being a bucket dipper. A bully is a bucket dipper. A bucket dipper says or does mean things that makes others feel bad. And a lot of people think that if you dip into a bucket, you can make yours full, but it's not how it works. A lot of people, in fact, who dip into others' buckets have an empty bucket themselves. But guess what? When you fill up someone's bucket, you fill your own bucket too, because you feel good when you help others. You guys did that. You guys did a big service project at Christmas, right? With your Christmas tree and the coat. Did that help? Help you feel good? So all day long, we're either filling up or dipping into each other's buckets by what we say and what we do. So try to fill a bucket and see what happens. So here are some ideas on how we could fill a bucket. You love your parents, so why not tell them? Or even your siblings, you could tell them how much you love them. And you could eat. Yeah, sometimes they get mad, but you still love them. And you could even tell them why you love them. And your caring words will fill their buckets right up. And you can watch for smiles to light up their faces. And you'll feel like smiling too. And that's a good way to know that you filled a bucket. And if you practice, you'll become a great bucket filler. Just remember, everyone carries an invisible bucket. And think of what you can say or do to fill it. You do, I promise. You really do. It carries all of your good feelings. Yeah, sometimes it floats above your head. You never know where it's going to be. Yep. So here are some ideas on how we can fill our bucket, other people's buckets. You can say hi to your bus driver. You could invite a new kid at school to play with you. You could write a thank you note for a teacher. You could tell your grandpa that you like to spend time with him. There are so many ways to fill a bucket. It's fun to fill a bucket. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. It doesn't cost any money, and it doesn't take much time. And remember, when you fill someone else's bucket, you fill your own bucket too. And when you're a bucket filler, you make your home, your school, your church, your neighborhood all better places to be. And bucket filling makes everyone feel good. So, as we're starting the new year, it's important to remember, why not decide to be a bucket filler every day? Think to yourself, I'm going to do something to fill someone's bucket today. And at the end of each day, ask yourself, did I fill a bucket today? And you can say, yes, I did. That's the life of a bucket filler. And that's you guys. So as you go into RE today, think about your teachers and your friends and what you can do to fill their buckets. And now we're going to sing you out.
We make a bridge for our KT as we sing them out to their classes.
But as you may notice, it's a little bit more crowded than usual, yeah? And I bet this time of year, the gym owners anyway, are just thrilled that there's all these suckers that are joining and prepaying 4 years ahead of time without necessarily using their membership later on. After all, statistics are in their favor. What are the statistics? I can't even say that word. What are the statistics, you may ask? Well, survey shows that over 40% of Americans make a New Year's resolution. But out of those number of people who make a New Year's resolution, guess how many are actually able to follow through with their resolution, even just a week later. 8%. Did somebody say 8%? That's the right answer. 8%. And we all know, of course, that as Unitarian Universalists, we're overachievers. So our numbers are probably higher than that. We're probably at 8.1%. Yeah? So our folks are way more determined to keep our New Year's resolution, such as attending church, for example, the first Sunday of the year, yeah, which is why we are all here. And so, you know, I'm actually not a trained physical therapist or a trained trainer like that, which explains why I'm so flabby myself. But anyway, what I am equipped to do as your spiritual leader is to encourage you to engage in a new spiritual health regimen. So how can we, for 2014, become more whole, more active, more energized in our spiritual life? And so for the next 3 weeks, we will be talking about spiritual health for the new year. Isn't that a fun title for a sermon? Are we all ready, folks?
Yes.
Don't make me bust out my Richard Simmons outfit. And the fro, yeah. Gotta have the fro, the hair. For those of you who are too young to catch that reference, go check it out on Wikipedia. So today we are going to begin with the beginning, and that is you, and you, and you. So how can we practice the art of self-care? All right? So a couple of days ago, I was actually flipping through my iPad for some news, and there was this one article that came from Inc. magazine. The title of the article is "One Vital Lesson I Learned from a Flight Attendant." And those of you who traveled, like Margaret, and those who were in Eugene and other parts of the country this past holiday season, you probably have the spiel and the gestures memorized by now of what the flight attendants tell you, right? They tell you what the exits are here, and here, and here, and here, and that in order to blow up your life vest, you need to either pull the strings or blow it. You've heard that spiel, right? Well, one spiel that probably stuck out in your minds was the one about putting on a mask in the case that there's a decrease in cabin pressure. We all heard of that one, yeah? So that this bag will magically drop from on top of you. And what did they usually tell you? Make sure you put it on first. So even before you help out a child, or someone who's acting like a child who's sitting next to you. Or if you can't make a decision on which child to put it on first, because maybe you have more than 2 children there, the article asks you to actually, right then and there, pick a favorite child. All right, so before... Anyway, no matter what happens though, you notice that they tell you to put the mask on first. And what a great image for what self-care looks like. And at the same time, I also noticed, this is probably very subtle and not many of you may have caught this, but for those videos, they usually show a mother putting her mask on first before the child, right? And I thought to myself, how goodly trained we are in this society. Is that another word? I'm just making up a bunch of words for the new year. How great a message that our society has ingrained and planted and brainwashed us, that only women are reared to be caregivers and the ones giving service to others. How many of you have read a poem called, Dennis, was that an amen? You're going to get beat up by others in this congregation. I better watch out. A few years ago, in the 1960s, there was a poem written by a poet named Shel Silverstein called The Giving Tree. How many of you have read this poem? So you're familiar with it. It was quite controversial. Because the premise is that there's this female tree who gives absolutely everything to, in my opinion, a bratty, entitled, privileged male child, right? Even when she had nothing left to give, she still kept giving and giving and giving and giving. And does it ever feel to you like some of you are living that kind of life that, you have the full bucket, but you have to give because people are guilting you into taking care of them when they're sick, or to caring for your elderly parents, or the list goes on and on and on. And sometimes you just feel like enough already. I need to make sure that my bucket is full too in order for me to share what I have in the bucket with others. And I run into this all the time with people who are do-gooders, especially those bleeding heart liberals. Because we all know that we care so much about fixing our broken world. We care so much about so many issues. And no matter how big a heart we have, if we bleed it, eventually we're still going to run out of blood. I tell you what. And so I've come across so many burned out activists that I decided I don't want to do that for myself. So you want to know how I am able to overcome that temptation to become a burned out activist? A couple things. One is that I decided to just pick a few issues and focus on them. Instead of trying to tackle the world's ills, I know what I'm good at, so I know I'm just going to focus on it for that time. It's not going to be forever and ever that I'm just going to focus on one issue, but in order to retain my sanity, I need to pace myself. All right, so that's the first step. The second step is a lot funner. It's to make sure that whenever you experience victory, celebrate. Yeah. So part of the covenant that I've had with other activists is I say, celebrate often. Don't just move from one issue to another. Give it a pause and make sure that you pamper yourself and practice self-care. So an example of this, I'll get to that, Richard. So an example of this was that after a very heated special session, I decided to do something that I have never ever done before in my whole entire life. I went on Groupon. That wasn't the thing I've never done before, right? I went on Groupon and I purchased a Groupon for a facial. Yeah, very self-indulgent, you might ask, and you might say, and I got married, as Richard pointed out. So that's celebration, yeah. And I make sure that I look good for my marriage. I have a great facial, free from blackheads and other skin blemishes, yeah. Yeah, I even spent the extra $5 to get, anyway, the extra special treat. So some of you may say, I really see that as being more selfish and self-indulgent rather than, you're a minister, for goodness sakes. Doesn't it say in your job description that for 24/7, you're supposed to be on. You're supposed to be taking care of others, taking care of your congregation, taking care of your flock, taking care of the community, doing this and doing that. 24/7. You're not supposed to even think about yourself. You don't have a self. Your life belongs to your church. But if I were to do that, I would be useless to all of you. Because here's what Parker Palmer says. And Parker Palmer, just to give you a little bit of a background, by the way, he's a Quaker activist. And for the longest time, he's worked on issues like peace and justice and all those other wonderful things that we Unitarian Universalists care about as well. Well, he reached a point in his life where he just got so tired of it all, and he ended up in a funk, and he actually got depressed. And so he chronicled how he was able to turn and transform his life around from that. And one of the ways that he said was he actually had to go deep within and practice self-care. And here's what he has to say about going into the inner life. He says, go far enough on the inner journey, they all tell us. Go past ego toward true self. And you end up not lost in narcissism, but returning to the world, bearing more gracefully the responsibilities that come with being human. So rather than going in and ending up focusing on yourself, becoming selfish or narcissistic, what Parker Palmer says that what you'll find is the world. And that you become more graceful whenever you encounter difficult situations or whenever you encounter injustice and anger in the world. That when you go and be in touch with your people, the seed of the ground of your being, that you become more fully alive, and somehow or another your spirit becomes re-energized, revitalized, and renewed. So that's it. That's the end of my sermon. Just kidding. I do have 3 hows, though, if we could get there. So I do have some advice about some tips, some pointers, as you will, for how to practice the art of self-care. Number 1, I think that it would behoove us to perhaps come up. What happened to the screen? Anyway, I'm just going to leave it alone now. Come up with a covenant that we can make with ourselves. So a covenant to care for the ground of our being, for the seat of who we are, our true self. All right. So when you go home after the service today, sit yourself down and say, what are the activities that I enjoy doing that I can pamper myself with? Is it to get a facial? Is it to get a massage? Is it to go to a spa? Is it to practice yoga? What is it that would bring joy and refill your creative spiritual juices so that you become well-grounded for the future? And this isn't just one of those things where it's a nice thing to do sometime in the future, but it is essential for you to do it now, because there's no use to us if you're burned to a crisp. So if you're a burned out person, we're much better off if you are actually whole and well. And the second thing that's associated with that is come up with a list of who has to rely or depend on you on a daily basis, and who's counting on you to be your best self at all times. And notice that they wouldn't be getting the care they need either if you're burned out, right? If you haven't received the care that you have. Look, we've heard that song that we sung for our opening hymn today. May I be filled with loving kindness. I comes first. Then when you're filled with loving kindness, then those around you and we will all be filled with loving kindness. Ever notice that? So it has to begin with you. That's number 1. So make a covenant with yourself. Number 2, pick some activities and take baby steps towards it. Don't come up with this grand vision of where you want to be. Ever notice that people who want to lose weight, they don't just say, I want to lose 2 pounds this year. They say, I want to lose 50 pounds this year, or 30 pounds, right? So come up with something that you know you can achieve and is realistic, and try to get there. An example of this is I decided one year to take up journaling. And my penmanship sucks. It's the most horrible penmanship in the world, so I don't even bother to write anymore these days. But I started out by getting a calendar and a journaling book that could fit at most 3 lines per day, right? So it forces me to just kind of summarize how I felt that day and narrow it down to just 3 lines. So if it's just something as small as that baby step, it's the beginning of a spiritual practice. And there's probably others that you could think of, the more typical ones like gardening or meditating or yoga. But there's also some creative ones like the one that I mentioned during my wedding. I don't know how many of you remember my vow, but I said that I promised to turn my cell phone off during my days off. That is difficult for me, as some of you can attest to. So I'm going to try it out. I'm going to try out so if y'all don't hear from me on Mondays and Thursdays, this is the reason why, all right? It's because I'm practicing self-care. And what's another way to practice self-care? Maybe it's just to reduce the number of negative comments that you say in a day, and the number of complaints that you make in a day. So just reduce it by a couple and see where your life goes when you fill yourself up with positive energy and positive thoughts and things that would build you up instead of tear you or others down. So that's the second thing, is find a new way and a baby step way of coming up with spiritual practices that would bring healing and wholeness and passion and joy to your life. The third is make sure you enlist others on your journey. Make sure that others are holding you accountable. So whether it's joining an Ohana Covenant group or asking for the help of a spiritual director, someone who will tell you whether you're staying on the right path or not. And make sure that they don't beat you up if you fall or something like that, right? Make sure it's someone who's compassionate and who will gently remind you that these are the goals that you have set for yourself. So we got it? Think we can do that? All right, good. So I'm just going to end by saying that, our job here as the church is really not just to go out into our community, out into our society to transform our world. But we can't expect to do that if we can't even be transformed ourselves. So this year, I'm hoping that each of you will go forth from here, transformed, so that you could then in turn transform our world. Maybe so.